I'm Michael Mullet. I'm going to be talking about National Sword today. So most of us don't think about what happens to our recycling when we put it in the recycling bin. We trust the system to work as it should, but I've got a question. What if it doesn't? So this is a question that I and many other people in the Sustainability Club at Hesston, we think about it and we wonder about what happens to our recycling after it leaves Hesston College. So I like to look at things in an economic view. I try to find solutions economically to things that happen in the world. So today I'm going to be discussing an economic solution, maybe two, to what National Sword is. But first we have to define National Sword. We have to get some background into what it is. And we should probably discuss how it happened, how it affects the United States infrastructure. So, to begin with, National Sword is China's declaration that it will no longer accept the world's waste. So, before 2018, China accepted 72.5% of the world's imports, according to Amy Brooks, who is an author and researcher for the New Materials Institute at University of Georgia. So, both China and Hong Kong, collectively, they accepted most of the world's imports. As you can see, all of those trails are imports of plastic waste into China. But then China released the National Sword policy in the beginning of 2018, which actually eliminated all of those. So every single metric ton of recycling that went into China is now being displaced. This graph here represents displacement over the next 20 years for recycling. It's cumulative, so it steadily goes up. And that line up there, that's what would happen if they didn't release a policy like this. But the fainter dotted line that goes horizontally, that's pretty much exactly what it's gonna look like over the next 20 years. And they're gonna increase more and more bans, not just on plastic, but on other goods. So this is kind of a problem for the American recycling infrastructure. And the reason why is because all of that waste is now going to be pretty much storing in our own recycling facilities. So why did this happen? Well, a lot of the reason why it happened is because a lot of our recycling that we have shipped to China previously has been contaminated by foods, liquids, non-recyclable materials, and it's become a huge burden on Chinese recycling infrastructures. So it was a huge burden on their economy as well, and it wasn't very profitable. So in an effort to build up their own infrastructure, they pretty much just eliminated all imports completely. So how well have we actually prepared for this? So the United States recycling infrastructure is not equipped to manage all the plastic waste being produced in the United States. In an NPR interview with Keith Harrison, the CEO of Recycling Partnership, the United States outsourced so much of its recycling to Asia that the domestic industry has languished. So what that means is that we haven't really had any reason to build up our own facilities because we could just ship it all to Asia, right? Well, no longer is that the case. So now there's a burden on our own facilities. All this plastic waste is being stored in our own facilities. This increases the cost of recycling across the entire United States, and it decreases the revenue associated with it. So recycling is now even less profitable than it used to be, and individual communities actually have to find their own way to recycle and find markets for their exports. Basically, that means not good. Individual communities, a lot of them are shutting down recycling capability. A lot of them are decreasing or limiting their recycling. For example, the mayor of Franklin, New Hampshire, Judy Milner, in an Atlantic interview with her, she says that we are doing our best to be environmentally responsible, but we can't afford it. So a lot of that recycling is now being burned and it's being put into landfills. she says that costs of recycling rose from $6 a ton before this event to $125 a ton. That's a huge increase. And the cost of incinerating is a lot cheaper than that. So a lot of communities are doing this. A lot of them are shutting down their recycling. So we haven't prepared very well for this event. So what are some solutions that we can do right now? Well, I have two solutions here. The first is economic, the second one is more environmental. So first, the US government needs to work with businesses to reduce plastic production. And second, we need to spread awareness about recycling. So first of all, packaging takes up around 40% of all recycled materials that businesses produce. So if we actually reduce that packaging, heck, we could actually eliminate a lot of plastic that's being littered and being put into landfills and stuff. So Brooks states that plastic packaging for food, beverages, and tobacco make up 61% of global beach litter. So this is just packaging for 3 different items, and it makes up 61% of all beach litter in the world. So if we can reduce that number, I think that'll actually be really great for the environment. So an economic incentive for businesses to maybe stop producing so much plastic in their items and in their materials. The United States government could implement a sort of tax incentive, so businesses would be taxed less if they reduce their plastic. I think that would be great for business overall. That would be great for the environment. It would be great for consumers. And if there's less production of plastic, heck, there's less consumption of plastic, which is great. And it kind of alleviates the problem, the burden on our American recycling. So another thing though, we're kind of really bad at recycling in general. According to Cheryl Katz from Yale Environment 360, even before China's ban, only 9% of discarded plastics were being recycled, and 12% were burned. So we really could boost those numbers. Right now, we are not great at recycling. Obviously, there isn't enough awareness. There isn't enough people that actually want to recycle or spend the money to recycle. And I think if we spread awareness of that, I think we could definitely recycle more and put less plastic in landfills, which hurts the environment, as does incineration. So basically, make a conscious decision to consume a little bit less plastic, just a little bit less, and one drop in the bucket might be enough to help solve this problem. Also, make sure you clean out your plastics before you throw them away, because contamination is the reason why China implemented this ban in the first place. So clean out those plastics and try to recycle a bit more, I guess. So in conclusion, National Sword Chinese policy, which banned most plastic exports from our country into China. The United States is not able to handle all the plastic waste, and our recycling capabilities are decreasing. And we might have some solutions to this, but they're going to be really hard to implement. It's going to have to change an entire culture in order to solve this problem. But I have hope that we can change this problem and we can maybe look forward to the future. Yeah, thank you all for listening.